As we've heard, the Chinese ambassador to Australia says Beijing will never allow Taiwan independence, indicating its intention to reunify and re-educate residents once the island is brought back under Chinese control. Let's get some analysis. I'm joined by former General Gus McLachlan here in the studio with me. Thanks so much for your time. This is a really difficult moment in our region, isn't it, with these live fire exercises happening off the back of the Pelosi visit. How worried are you about a risk of miscalculation?
Whenever there's armed soldiers, sailors and air crew in the field, is always a danger. There's a danger of miscalculation, there's a danger of escalation. So this is a really significant period. The Pelosi visit was inflammatory at a level that was likely to draw a response. I'll be honest, I thought the first phase of the Chinese response was reasonably predictable. I didn't anticipate we'd see this elongated second phase, which I think is a really significant escalation in itself.
And do you think, are they using this crisis to then nudge forward and sort of create a new normal to a degree?
There's a number of things. I personally think they've overplayed their hand. In many ways, this exposes a lot of their capability, the state that they are in terms of their joint command and control. They will be emitting signatures from these platforms, all of which will be being consumed in different headquarters around the Pacific. There's no question that their capability is rapidly closing on that of the West. But the people, their ability to do joint synchronisation is probably behind. So there is probably a genuine element to this exercise. They will be taking that level of synchronisation to a new level. But in many ways it has exposed this sort of plan for encirclement, the deployment zones, the way they've deployed themselves. I'm surprised they've disclosed as much of their planning and capability as they have.
And showed their hand, as you put it.
Yeah.
So in terms of the great advantage they've got, that is the proximity. It's almost, it's hard to imagine from a lay perspective how you could stop it if that was their intention.
Yeah, but Ukraine's taught us some very interesting lessons. The lethality of these modern weapons with their sort of AI-enabled seekers, the ability for these anti-ship missiles to penetrate the Moskova's defence in the Baltic Sea, all of these things will be giving us cause to think that 140 or 150 kilometre strait would be an incredibly lethal zone. Now, interestingly, the exercise has shown us this sort of envelopment model where we've seen, a sort of Chinese encirclement of Taiwan. So, again, if I was planning an operation, you would try and isolate Taiwan from reinforcing elements from other countries, including the Pacific Fleet. And then you might try and make that dangerous crossing with your amphibious ships. This would be an incredibly dangerous, lethal, bloody invasion. And so for that reason, I'm certainly hopeful that there's no escalation because when you fire a missile at a ship and the ship penetrates, hundreds of sailors are killed instantly. This isn't a single IED. On a land-based soldier. So the risks are enormous. This is a really significant game, and I use that term carefully.
So even with the rising military strength and the proximity, it still carries with it enormous risks.
Absolutely, and I think we will have seen the Taiwanese will have been studying the need for these anti-ship missiles, the lethality that brings. Of course, that's been on the shopping list for Taiwan for some time. Things like the Harpoon anti-ship missile, Australia's procuring the same sorts of capabilities, long-range surface-to-surface fires, to make the risk calculus of crossing that strait so enormous that a rational actor wouldn't take that step. I mean, that's the Taiwanese and I guess US defensive mindset. And the question is, does Xi Jinping have the same, calculus of the human cost of that sort of invasion?
And does he? Obviously, the main aim is to reunify. They want to do that, and you would imagine they would want to do it first and foremost peacefully. But by showing this military might, is that part of the strategy here to say, well, if you're going to keep pushing us here, this is what we can do?
Yeah, well, there's lots of old sayings, of course. Walk quietly but carry a big stick. We've certainly known of the enormous growth in in Chinese naval capability. We know they've got these long-range steerable ballistic missiles which are lethally accurate that can probably hit now a US aircraft carrier that approaches inside the Guam, island chain line. So we've known of the reality of their big stick for some time. It's another thing to go to this level. But I think the key thing for us all to understand is the paradigm around which we all agreed this one China construct was on the assumption that we'd see this progression of sort of liberal, increasingly democratic ideals. That hasn't occurred. So we're really stuck now, having all declared a one China policy, setting a timeframe that was supposed to allow the emergence of a new liberal order, which unfortunately seems to have stalled.
Retired Major General Gus McLachlan, great to get your insights. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.